From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Tuesday, December the 5th, 2023. 7 IDF soldiers were killed during fierce battles with terror group Hamas in Gaza yesterday and today. They are 31-year-old Master Sergeant in Reserve Matan Damari, 23-year-old Master Sergeant in Reserve Eli Eliyahu Cohen, 24-year-old Captain Yahel Gazit, 34-year-old Master Sergeant in Reserve Gil Daniels, 23-year-old Captain Eitan Fish, 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Tuval Yaakov Tsanani, and 21-year-old Sergeant Yakir Yedidia Shenkolevsky. And difficult battles continued today in Gaza as IDF forces advanced into Khan Yunis, the largest city in southern Gaza. The IDF citing commander of the Southern Command, Major General Yaron Finkelman, saying we are in the most intense day since the beginning of the maneuver in terms of terrorists killed, the number of encounters, and the use of fire from the ground and from the air. We intend to continue to attack and deepen the achievement, he said, referring there to the battle against terror group Hamas. IDF International spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari spoke today of this next phase of the operation in Gaza and noted the continued IDF efforts to avoid harm to civilians and to direct them to safety.
Every civilian death is a tragedy that the IDF does not want and is taking extensive measures to avoid. While Hamas terrorists hide behind civilians, Israel does its best to distinguish between civilians and terrorists. We're dropping leaflets with QR codes that opens a map guiding Gazans to safer areas. The map is divided into neighborhood numbers indicating where civilians in a specific area should go to avoid being in the crossfire.
Asking also for the help of the international community in those efforts and asking for the international community to help in getting the Red Cross to have access to the Israelis still being held captive in Gaza.
137 hostages are being held in inhumane and brutal conditions, and not one international organization has seen them.
The IDF stressing that every moment in captivity endangers the hostages, writing, "We are doing everything to return them home as soon as possible." Well, family members of some of the hostages taken captive during the October 7th Hamas massacre, as well as several hostages who have been released, held a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the War Cabinet today to discuss their experience and share some of the horrors they went through and express the urgent call and plea for those still being held to be returned home safely. Rockets continued to be fired from Gaza today at southern and central Israel, including at Tel Aviv and the surrounding area. One man in his 40s was said to have been lightly hurt in the Tel Aviv area by falling shrapnel, and 2 women in their 60s also lightly hurt by shrapnel after a direct rocket impact in Ashkelon. Well, among the incidents of anti-Semitism here in the U.S. that have sharply risen since the October 7th Hamas massacre, a protest that targeted a restaurant founded by Israeli-American celebrity chef Michael Zalmanson. The protest, organized by the Philly-Palestine Coalition, calling for a ceasefire. Protesters gathered outside Zalmanson's falafel chain Goldie in Philadelphia Sunday night, chanting slogans like "Goldie, Goldie, you can't hide, we charge you with genocide." Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, who is Jewish, called this a blatant act of anti-Semitism, not a peaceful protest. He wrote, "A restaurant was targeted and mobbed because its owner is Jewish and Israeli. This hate and bigotry," he said, "is reminiscent of a dark time in history." White House Deputy Press Secretary and Senior Communications Advisor Andrew Bates said the White House condemned the incident yesterday. He wrote, characterizing the demonstration as an act of anti-Jewish prejudice. Well, in a massive show of support for Israel, a call for the release of the hostages, and a united stance against anti-Semitism, Thousands came out to rally in Ottawa yesterday. An estimated 15,000 to 20,000 people gathered on Parliament Hill in an event organized by Jewish federations across Canada and the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs. Speakers included prominent Canadian politicians, Jewish leaders, and college students. While sharing the pride of all those who came out, organizers also noted that 17 buses did not show up to bring members of Toronto's Jewish community to the rally. UJA Federation of Greater Canada President and CEO Adam Minsky said, "We are driven to the view that this shameful decision is intended to disrupt our peaceful rally out of hatred toward Jews," noting a similar situation last month when buses refused to take participants to the pro-Israel rally in Washington. Minsky called the incident yesterday sickening and outrageous, vowing to respond aggressively, he said, with every legal and public affairs tool at our disposal, noting that alternative travel arrangements were made for those affected, saying just ahead of the rally that it is proceeding as planned and our voices will be more determined than ever. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Tuesday, December the 5th at 7 o'clock, Robert Siegel and panelists talk about combating anti-Semitism. At 8, Benjamin Anthony is joined by Bret Stephens to talk about rising anti-Semitism. And then at 8:30, Anthony sits with Doron Libshtein, who lost 4 family members on October the 7th. At 9, Anat Zalmanson Kuznetzov is on L'chaim. At 10, we hear from Chief Rabbi of Moscow Pinchas Goldschmidt. And coming up next, it's the ILTV's Insider. And that's the JBS News Update for Tuesday, December the 5th, 2023. I'm Teisha Bader. Am Yisrael Chai.